Yep, I'm here.
681.
681.
All right, man. Wow. Felt like I heard the bass in that intro a little more than normal.
No, seriously. I mean, you could add a little bit of a subwoofer, kind of like back in the day, some neon lights underneath the laptop desk. We could have gone like really old school, put on some old school rap. But it's July 1st, the year 2025. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 608. No, not 600. 800. And what, 61? Is that where we are? Dude, I totally went blank. I had it nailed before we went live. And then you started talking about old school rap and subwoofers. And I'm like, what number? Are we 881? That sounds more like it.
Oh, God. I got the wrong notebook, so I was just like, all right, whatever you say. And I think it's 861.
861. See, listen, when you love your job and you love casting, you just don't count. You just log in, you do it, and you got to come up with a number because you gotta like list it in Spotify and iTunes. But yeah, 861 sounds right too, right? I mean, it's just 139 left to go. But yeah, 861.
Yeah, 35 straight days of podcasting is what you came up with. Yeah, we're counting. No.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, 861. That sounds just about right. And crazy to think that we're a day and a few hours into Q3. Blaze through Q1. The June is gone. Seems like it flew by. I feel like June is like one of the fastest months every year. Beginning of summer, everybody's busy. People are traveling. You got a busy race schedule. A little bit of a lull this last week with July 4th coming up on this Friday. And everything else. But yeah, people are traveling and there's not a lot of races going on, last week and then this week, but then everything's kicked back up. And you got Musselman and Muncie the following week. So things kind of kick back off and they go on a little bit of a run, take a little bit slight breather in August, outside of like Louisville and a couple of the races. And then obviously September, October, November is full steam ahead, at least here in the North American calendar. But yeah, it's warm. We all know that. We commented on it and we're just going to kind of move past it. It's the summertime. We're always used to it. And this is the kind of thing that happens. But yeah, happy to be here and happy to not be counting podcasts correctly on a Tuesday in July. And, there's worse things that could be going on right now, I guess.
It's the weirdest thing. It's really hot out this summer.
I know, right? It's like it never happened. And we're going to say the exact, I don't remember who I was, the person who cuts my hair. She just moved here. She's from like
Frankie?
Thailand.
Oh,
No, it's not Frankie. Yeah, I mean like this, I already told you off here the other day about my
that's 681 podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, my dilemma with the hair cutting. It's just a hard balance, right? Anyway, we don't need to go into that, but she said, all people here in the summer is complain about how hot it is and how all they do is, and how they can't wait for it to cool off. And then in the winter, all they do is complain about how cold it is. They can't wait for it to get hot. I was like, yeah, that sums up America, right? We're pretty much not happy at all with whatever we have right now outside of like 3 months of the year that are like perfectly ideal. Which honestly, like, it's not like the intentional segue, but one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with other athletes, and we've talked about it a ton on the podcast, and even like have used a phrase, progress, not perfection. And I was talking to this with I think maybe even 3 specific athletes last week, just about how this is obviously very, very true with most, not triathletes, not all triathletes are type A, but a lot of triathletes, especially now that everything can be, doesn't have to be, but can be so perfectly laid out digitally, is that we have become like these creatures of, well, if it can't be perfect, then it shouldn't be done. And I was just speaking to them about how, like, hey, some of them are going through trying to lose a little bit of weight and sort of changing up their training. They're doing a little bit less volume. They're doing a little bit less intensity. They're just trying to, more of like a calorie deficit. And obviously if you're doing that, especially when it's hot outside, like you can't just go crush yourself. And then, cause what's going to happen is you're going to like drop, and then you're going to be, eating trunk cookies before you know it. So, and the other one was so worried about being so great at this one race that if the workout wasn't going to do, or wasn't going to look the way they wanted it to in training peaks, like perfect grain, perfect graph, they just weren't doing it because they're like, oh, well, what's the point if I can't do it the way I want to do it, then why am I not? So they're just continuously getting in our own way. Like same thing going for the person who's like trying to like do a little bit of weight loss, and like they're just more looking to kind of maybe address their general overall health, which is what we see all the time, right? We talked about a ton, here, the podcast. I think with us personally is people go to these like drastic extremes and ask themselves to be perfect. And then the next thing you know, like they last about 72 hours of perfection, and then they completely revolt and they end up putting on more weight than they did, because we ask so much of perfection. Again, I think honestly, like a huge part of the problem is the perfectionist nature. Not that a lot of the athletes are perfectionists, right? But that we've become kind of obsessed with how things look and how things are laid out digitally, whether it's, turning your training peaks green or following the perfect graph on, the numbers that you're given, or the layout of the week. Like we're very, it's almost like incapable, not of flexibility, but of, just kind of embracing the fact that we all know that nothing is perfect anyway. We all know that no day pretty much goes to plan already, or a week for that matter, or a month, right? And definitely not a year. Like we all know these things, but yet in the moment, in like a microscopic level, like we still get sucked into that belief. It's kind of like we all will say openly, no one trusts the weather. You could just make shit up, and guess what? People are still going to tune in tomorrow. And they're going to like, hey, what's the weather like tomorrow? Even though 3 minutes ago, you probably just said, well, you can't trust it anyway. Like, what's the weather tomorrow? And then we're going to make our plans around something we've already said we know isn't perfect and borderline unreliable at best. But we still find that. So I think, like, again, as we get further into the year, now we're just over, barely, but just over halfway through the year. More and more races are coming, kind of cascading down the event calendar. You're kind of getting into the serious meat of the season. And it is like, I know we joked about it, or I joked about it, about the heat. And I think a lot of people are also bailing on sessions because they're not going to see the numbers that they want to see from the chin up. Because it is, let's be honest, it is like in a lot of places, it's insanely oppressive. Like if you went by the dew point, the humidity and heat charts, that basically says like, hey, 73 or above dew point, like consider not training outside, because it's going to almost have like a, the opposite effect. You're gonna be so stressed and so out of it that you're not gonna get any benefit of it. It's not gonna be, worth the amount of stress you're gonna put on yourselves. And so I think a lot of people are just completely bailing on stuff because they aren't gonna see what they hope to see. Again, it's that mentality of if it's not going to be perfect, or I can't do it the way that I thought or expected it to be done, then I can't do it. If I show up to the pool and I got to share a lane and I forgot my watch, well, I don't want to do it because I can't log and I'm not going to have the metrics when I get done. Or I don't have the time to kind of hop on the trainer and do my workout for an hour and 15. I could squeeze in 45, but that's not going to be the workout, so I'm just going to skip it. Or it's way too hot outside. I know I'm not going to see the numbers I want to see, so I'm just going to skip the run completely and bail, versus maybe doing like a walk run to keep your heart rate in check, to keep the integrity of the workout. Like this is a very hard time of the year for people to, I think, kind of manage their obsessive nature about things having to be perfect, right, in order to be progressive or to be purposeful. And it's not just, their personality, but now they're being thrown, again, summer schedules are also challenging for a lot of parents, because you don't have, that kind of luxury of like, hey, bye, see you later, have a great day, it's cool. And you're like, thank God you're gone for the day. You have like summer camps that are varying hours. Sometimes you don't have camps. Sometimes you're traveling, you're seeing family, you got holidays. It is a very, there's kind of two, kind of tons of athletes like, hey, I want to do an early season race because January through May, end of May is predictable. I got childcare every day. It's a predictable schedule. Nothing on the weekends. We're not traveling as much. The weather's pretty predictable, or at least not as like crazy. So I can just control myself inside. Well, now you're kind of outside. You're doing summer stuff. You got vacations. You got changes in your work schedule, changes in your kid's schedule. You got races that are coming, so volume and intensity is probably increasing. And if that's increasing and you're getting close to your race day, so is your like where you sit mentally and emotionally in terms of like, man, like you can start to feel the pressure from the race. Things matter more, and when they matter more, and you have like increased, obstacles or inconsistencies in like your schedule, it's a recipe for disaster. And this is like a period of time where I see more athletes give up on their training because it can't be perfect than just give in to the, you know what, it just is what it is right now. I got to get the intent of the workout in, and I got to listen to myself and just do the best that I can. And that is okay, because doing something is better than doing absolutely nothing.
Well, you're hitting on something with me, kind of in a sense of this idea of perfection is kind of like it kind of takes some fun of it away in a way. And I just think that every day I go on, it seems like I go on to Training Peaks and there's like some new metric popping up in my face. And I'm like, what the fuck is this thing? Like, what even is this? Why do we need to have something else here? It's almost like I think these, like the technocrats of the world are just trying to give us more and more shit to kind of like weigh our brain down. It's almost like, God forbid we go out and ride a bike and have fun like a kid used to do it, or, it's sort of like, going to college and studying, majoring in French so you can speak the language with people that know how to speak the language. But really you're just like, everybody's like focused on you get a degree. You got a degree in French. No, that's not why I did it. I wanted to go speak the language, and I just think about this a lot regarding, like you're saying, it's hot out, all this kind of stuff. And we're just so serious about everything. I was telling you beforehand, like it rained all week. So my little 100 yards out there turned into about like 105 yards. And I just kind of was laughing about it because my times are just like going to shit, because now it's like 100 meters or more or whatever, but it's like, so what? I'm just trying to swim. And honestly, whenever I train anymore, I'm trying to find the most enjoyable piece of that puzzle. Sometimes I push it a little harder, but you know what? I'm really interested in enjoying what I'm doing, and that doesn't mean it's always like super easy or anything like that. And it's never, sometimes it's hard to get into it, but like, it's hot out. How are we going to make it, how are you going to stay cooler? I mean, there's challenges all over the place. And, yeah, I know you're serious about like people actually skip workouts because they're worried about the perfection. Are you serious about that? I guess the people do that. Yeah.
100%.
I know you're saying
yeah,
it, but it's just like,
this, right? Like they just like, I just don't want to see it. It's too, I'm like, but you can also, and I don't know if I said this on last week's podcast. I don't think I did, but I think it's maybe on the Zoom call I did on stress, but was like, that's also because I also have these athletes that, and I get it because I was this last athlete, like last week, like I ran 5 or 6 days last week. I walked a ton out in like the heat of the day. And on the stress podcast, I was like, this is, if you are like in a rut or you're trying to like come out of your shell and like get some fucking work in this year, get your act together, get back to training, conventional wisdom might say, this ain't the time to do it. But I say it's 100% the right to do it. Not because it's like, oh, seize the day and there's no better day than today. It's the fact that it is so it's so oppressive outside, and none of the conditions you see are going to scream PR, 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 or nail the workout. It's going to be just like, get it done. And I think with that comes an insane amount of freedom. Because if you're a person just getting off the couch or trying to find like your training groove, and you just want to like walk into a room, and just not give a fuck, this is the time. Because you can go outside and you can go for a run at 1 o'clock in the day, and instead of running straight for 50 minutes, which might sound really, really intimidating, right? And your pace is going to be a struggle. Then just do like 4-minute run, 1-minute walks times 10. And who gives a shit? Because once you start walking, it's going to interrupt your average pace, but at least you're doing something, because you don't expect it to be great because it's so hot. You can just leave that crap, back home or back in your, your journal, your goal setting, calendar, whatever it is, and your expectations. Like right now, it's like free work. You go out and you do a run in the heat, and you do it, again, with some intensity control, like by controlling your heart rate. You're picking up freebies every mile because it's so hot. Like once it starts to cool down, it's gonna be magical. Same thing with riding. Like just get rid of the power if you need to, and just go by your heart rate. Like just enjoy, this. And like there's just so many. Again, like it's not just workouts. It's like, hey, like I was joking with an athlete who was like, hey, would it be problematic if I, is there any downside to, or do you see a problem in me taking a 3-day fishing trip in like the end of August? In my response, I dug deep into my coaching hat, and I looked at the data, and I looked at the periodization, annual training plan, and I said, yeah, I said, I do. If you don't catch anything. That's the downside. If you go on a fishing trip for 3 days and you don't catch anything, legit, that's the only downside. Like It's 3 days. It is 3 days over the course of a insanely long year and tons of training. Like it's not going to matter at all. In fact, it might do you some good, right? Unless you don't catch anything, you might come back kind of as a downer. But and like you said about having fun. Like I got back, and I do. And this is true for me too. Is like as a coach, like sometimes I get too in the weeds about trying to make a plan perfect that I overthink it, or a training block perfect that I overthink it. And I kind of started I've always been like this since I was a kid. Like I was obsessed with architecture and like designing houses. And like I would spend all this time, hours and hours. I was supposed to be doing my homework. I'd be upstairs. My parents like, man, he's quite studious. He's up there for hours. We don't know what he's doing. I wasn't doing any homework. I was like creating floor plans and designing houses. That's all I was doing. And if I had to erase something, and we've all been there, we're going to go to erase it, and here comes the erasing smudge. And it just like destroys your whole paper. I would throw it away. Even if I had spent hours on it, I couldn't get past the imperfection of like the dreaded eraser smear. Like I just couldn't get past it. And so I've always been like that in a lot of ways. But so anyway, what you're saying about having fun is I got back from my run this morning, and I walked in the door, and Hayden's got swim practice at 8, and I've been trying to encourage him to like do a few more things beforehand, frankly, because he just gets up so damn early. I'm like, do something with your life. And I walked in, he's like, hey, would you want to go on a bike ride with me? And I'm thinking, like in my head, I'm thinking, fuck no. Like I just got back from a run. Like I don't want to go on a bike ride. I just got done doing my stuff. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, well, don't be he's trying to do something good. And I'm like, yes, you pick the route, you lead, I'll do it. And we did the same thing yesterday. We ran out of the park. He and I ran together for 5 minutes. We hopped back on the bike and came home. And we hopped on the bike. We rode kind of like a downhill, so there's not much pedaling. Hit the greenway, took a left, and then we're coming up this like curvy like switchback that does like I'm probably only thinking this because it's July, but I'm like, man, this like feels like the Pyrenees. Like going up like the weavy turns, and the Hayden's like kind of trying to drop the hammer on me and drop me. And we go through it. And I was like, man, that was just like the Pyrenees and the Tour de France. And he was like, all right, I'll be Tadej Pogačar, and you can be the other guy. And he's thinking about Vinigo. He just can't say the word. I'm like, I'll be Vinigo. So we hit up this climb, and he goes, no. We want to be the same team. And I'm like, well, I'll just pull you for a little bit. And when I swerve to the left, you just drop the hammer and you just like get it to the garage, get it to the driveway. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So we're doing this again here. He's like, turns 9 in July. And it was so, did I gain any fitness out of it? No. Like I gained zero. I didn't gain any, negligible. I gained zero fitness, but doing it, I had an absolute blast. I loved being on the bike. I loved being outside. I loved doing that with him. And I had zero plans to ride today. I already ran. And I was like, this is going to be it. That's what I'm going to do. And you know what I'm going to do after the podcast? I'm going to go hop on the bike and get a bike ride in.
Today?
Not because it was structured or scheduled or some perfect graph, but because I went out with the expectation of nothing, but just to be on my bike and do something that was fun. But it kind of lit, not a fire. I'm not going to definitely not going to say it's a fire.
Damn, the fire is lit.
But it's like, I'm back, baby. But no, it just reminded me how much I enjoy doing stuff like that. Like there was no watch. It was like, oh, well, I'm going on a 5-minute bike. I better start my watch just to get these extra 6 minutes in. I just enjoyed it. And I think that a lot of times, if we just don't do, you know, whether it's our mentality or whether it's how the training is laid out or whether it's just like how I think we're all wired now when it comes to training is that, you know, and I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, I'm sure you do, you know, probably more than me. Sometimes I get a lot of flack, like, well, why don't you care if I do this? I'm like, well, because you shouldn't have to care all the time. Right? It's like we have, you know, like look at the modern day work week. Like it's gone from like 5 days down to like 4. Some people it's like 3.
Or 7.
You know, right, or 7, right? It's over 7. But it's like we have like we've all as like a species, like we've always tried to build in like periods of relaxation and rest and recovery and freedom. Right? That's the weekend. That's always been, I'm just going to let loose and do whatever. Like, so who says we don't need that also in our training? Right? To have periods or time or even just workouts where it's like, just do it because you become a lot better at making decisions on your own. And also the freedom of just not making any decisions, whether it's a decision to adhere to your own workout or to not. And it's very prevalent in especially like in self-coached athletes. Like they overanalyze, and there's 400 podcasts listened to, ours included, you know, there's articles, there's, you know, blogs, there's, you know, social media, there's forums. Like they're trying to just do 1 week, and then you see one person's workout this, one person's workout this person's suggesting this is now the new thing, that's what everybody's doing. And it's like, it's, you know, analysis or paralysis by analysis, like all the time, instead of just like you said, like, I do think there's something to be said for, and it's 100% not for anybody, but like one of like, I don't think it's a diet, it's more of a lifestyle, but it's called like intuitive eating. Like instead of being like very, very, very stringent, you try to like listen to your body and just like during that moment, during that time, like you just kind of eat what you feel like you need. Obviously, if you feel like you need a Snickers, that's probably not the best idea. But if you're like, man, I feel like I need some like protein tonight, I try some heavy in protein. Or if I'm kind of craving a salad, let's go with the salad. Instead of trying to like structure every meal and every macro into your life, it absolutely just for most people, leads to one kind of a disordered thinking and feeling around food and metrics and scales and portion size and all these different things to then you just don't give a shit at all. So I think there's like this happy medium between like being invested in loving what your own process looks like than creating like a very unhealthy relationship with what perfection and progress has to look like, because the most important thing is it has to look your own way. And I think, you know, if you polled 5,000 athletes and you said, hey, you know, like you could be a 9 hour and 45-minute Ironman finisher once, but you'd have to do all these things you didn't want to do. Give up this, give up time, 6 more hours a week, less time with your kids, less time with your spouse, getting up earlier, sacrificing sleep, counting your calories, doing all these things. Like it sounds like, you're giving someone a job. Or you could squeeze out, a couple 10-hour 10-10s and do it your way and love the process and feel like you're never having to do anything. What the results would be. And then you also have to ask yourself is like, what's the likelihood of longevity in both of those? One, the over-disciplined, over-obsessed, a person who is able to knock off like one really great result, but then gets so burnt out and it's always chased until they over-perfect and they're never happy, versus the one that's just kind of like always in the game, always in the process because they love it and it's done their way. And that's why, again, like there's a lot of wiggle room. I think that way more wiggle room than athletes believe that there should be when they hire a coach. Is like, hey, it's okay to have a little bit of wiggle room here. and to make your own decisions and to kind of own that part of your journey. Because I think, even on like a smaller scale, if you just give someone like a small rep range, do 10 to 12 reps today, or do 6 to 8 reps on the bike, or whatever it might be, like you're still giving them a prescription and kind of like keeping them in a guardrails, but you're also kind of allowing them to make the ultimate decision. And sometimes there's a learning curve, right? Like they can learn different things, they can go harder, they can go easier. But I think it's kind of just one of the most underlooked areas for all people, is that little bit added extra flexibility.
Yeah, well, I had some trunk cookies yesterday, by the way.
My man.
Yeah, man, it's funny. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I mean, you went into the sort of the diet part of things, and I don't think I have a clue, to be honest, man. I mean, there's just so much shit out there, and I kind of explore a lot of it and whatever, the intermittent fasting, the protein this, protein that, but like you're saying, what intuitive eating, that kind of always sort of like lines up with, I guess if I had, you had me against the wall with a gun to my head, I would sort of lean in that area, because it's sort of, what do you eat in the summer? What do you eat in the fall? Like cooling foods, heating foods, things of that nature. And like, it seems like whenever I'm training hard, I can eat just about anything under the sun, and it doesn't matter. And it actually helps my body. But if I try to diet and starve myself, it gets weird, So all that to say is I have no clue sometimes. I mean, it's just there's so many options. And that's the thing, back to this whole idea with the metrics and all that shit. And we're training with this and that and always worried about that and this and that. And I'm like, when I can find enjoyment out of it, because I've talked about this before, but I mean, at least half of my workouts I dread, ever since I've started this sport. But I mean, I think, a lot of us do that shit alone, and we kind of struggle through, working hard days or whatever, a lot of stuff going on, and then you got to go work out or whatever. And, sometimes that pendulum swings to more like 75% I like versus 25 or whatever. But I'm just saying it, every workout isn't something I'm looking forward to. Like, sometimes you got to suck it up and get through it. And, I think that's part of it. I really do. I think that, I'm always looking for, like you said, sort of maybe even a bridge, or what we called them. What did I call those a couple of weeks ago? Primers, sort of like figuring out a way to kind of get into something. But I do always feel better when I'm moving. It's this weird, like, how do you get out of this, clunky headspace and not maybe be interested in what is on the agenda, and then you get into the agenda and it's like, damn, this actually feels good. But I do think there's a lot to be said for, A, taking a lot of, not putting so much pressure on everything, and B, not getting too deep in the weeds with, metrics and things of that nature. And like you're saying, just kind of pick we always talk about the integrity of the workout, but what's that mean? It's like, hey, just go out and ride easy. And if you feel like popping a few things, go for it, and more than likely you will, probably. But, it can be I just contend that most of the time it's probably mental fatigue that's getting us the hardest, in the summer. And I think we got to figure out how to, balance that mentally, because it does, that's real stress, and it's real, fatigue, because your brain is trying to figure shit out all the time, or whatever. You're trying to get out of things, whatever it may be. But anyway, I just find that interesting.
No, I mean, I think that's true for a lot of people. And sometimes like I even just like legit ask this, I'm like, that's, this is, beyond my ability, and I'm like, says who? Like, it's not beyond your ability to do this kind of, breathing pattern in the pool. It's just, you've convinced yourself you're not capable, or you've convinced yourself you can't run in the heat, or you've convinced yourself that you can't, tackle hilly courses. Like, that's not reality. It's just your own reality because of what you've convinced yourself, is to be true. And a lot of times, like, again, like that's why people go into these like really avoidant patterns. It's like they don't want to also like there's also like this underlying fear of a lot of athletes and a lot of just people, right? It's like they don't want to do something that they feel they might not be good at. And so if you have that mentality and you see a workout laid out that again like has ranges and has like, your coach can, I mean, like still to this day, I mean, and you can say it a bit because you can't change like right how people are, right? You can just do your best to allow them to be who they are in the best kind of environment you can provide. But like there's still athletes that I work with that I've been working with for 8 or 9 years. And I can tell them, same thing with your kid, right? Same thing I can tell Hayden. I'm like, and I tell these guys, I'm like, you could legit never disappoint me. Like, unless you cheat in a race, like you can never disappoint me. But they still have this fear of disappointing you. So they either do or don't do certain things. And even though you can tell them a billion times so they're blue in the face and they know it intrinsically, they know, I know I'm not going to disappoint you. They still have that fear or feeling of like, I just don't want to let you down. I'm like, you're legit never going to let me down. Like you take this way more seriously than I do. Like I'm just here to support you the best I can and, try to get you to have as most fun as possible and get better while we're doing it. And so you have a lot of athletes that pick up the sport and pick up endurance sports in general that project like how they are intrinsically and like how they, internally, how they're internalizing thoughts and feelings and behavior patterns and belief systems inside. Like, and that shows up and a lot of times in how they react to workouts, right? Like, I can't do this. Yes, you can do this. Right. It's just, what kind of day are you having? Or so that's why sometimes like you have to, remove all things and just say, because like to one athlete, if I said just ride for 4 hours, it'd be relief. And to one athlete would see that and be like, oh, sweet. I can just do what I want to today. Sweet. Got some flexibility. I can do what I want to. See, it's like, your parents go out of town for the weekend and they're like, don't have any parties. And you're like, as soon as they walk out the door, you're like, we're having a party. That's how some people see that ride. Other athletes, it's panic. 100% panic. Right? They're like, I've got to build this out. They go into Training Peaks. They're like, if you're not going to build it, fuck you. I'm going to build it. I'm going to build out my own 4-hour ride. I'm going to show you what training prescription looks like and intensity and structure is, because they have to have it. And so that's like, and there's few in the middle, but most are like one end of that pendulum of how things you look at, how they like it. And some of it's personal, but also it's like, you also don't give yourself a lot of, wiggle room. Wiggle room is where all the magic happens, in my opinion, not in the exactness, not in this like over precise, precision world that we live in that's always marketed with, professional athletes and professional cyclists and whatever. It's like, you got to get that, it's all about the marginal gains at 1%. It's got to be perfect. Like those are for people who are also willing to do whatever they need to do to their bodies, regardless of longevity, to win. And if you're not in that bucket, you're not in that camp, then maybe you shouldn't follow that same thing. I mean, I'll never forget like watching this Magnus Ditlev video like 2 or 3 years ago. They were doing like just kind of like taking through a training. He was like, and this is what I eat after every bike ride and before and for dinner. And I know this is not healthy, but it is what is required. And I'm thinking like, people are going to see this and they're going to do it because you say you do it. And like you, but that again, like this is also a person who's willing to sacrifice, probably if you asked him, a decade off his life to be able to win. And I remember, but people, and then people just like copy and paste and do that. And they just want like, that's why like, I think people have to be very careful about all these things they say, especially like on podcasts that are way more popular than ours. Cause age group athletes who have absolutely no business even like remotely trying any of this. And with the, amount of confidence some people say it, I'm like, that's just not like how it should be. And, going back to like, the heavy prescription on training is, there's so much magic that happens because that's also like, to me, that's where the, the watch list race kind of starts. But what about the data afterwards? Who gives a shit? It's going to be on the timing mat. Like we can just use that. And if you had a good day, you did, but you'll learn way more about yourself flying by the seat of your pants, having a fun time than anything else. you know, just go after it and make mistakes and do things, that are, again, like, that are fun, but instead of being so paralyzed all the time about, I don't want to mess up. Well, that feeling of not ever messing up, you might not have like this one disastrous workout, but you're also never going to have the amazing sessions that lead to the biggest breakthroughs, because you're so paralyzed by, not messing up or not hitting this or going over or going under, that you're never going to be able to listen to your body well enough to be the best version of what you think you can do, or that you actually can do.
Yeah. I honestly think that that's at the core of everything, is like, if you're that paranoid and you're like tense about making mistakes, I don't think you know how to let go. I mean, to race well enough. I mean, I think about that a lot, because I've never been a really good swimmer, but sometimes when I swim a lot, I start to swim and not think about my, arms and my fucking legs and all that shit. And I just start swimming, and you know what happens? I go faster. And I think the same thing happens when you're riding a bike and when you're running. And if you can actually, it's, they call it flow state or whatever you want to say about it, but there's something real there. I'm sure you're not thinking about swimming when you get in the water too damn much.
No.
You're just swimming, but like, when I say that, I mean that when I throw my right arm out there, I'm doing it with like a authority, not some fucking, it has to hit a foot outside of my head shit, whatever. You know what I mean? I'm figuring it out as I go, but I'm swimming to that point. The more I swim, the more I get that way. But I just think that makes a lot of sense when you're talking about, paranoia about screwing up or whatever the case may be. It's like you have to understand ranges and like where that ballpark is. And, the reason I feel like I can talk about it is because I know what that feels like in those ballparks. And I said I'm a ballpark type of guy, but a lot of times I'm on the real, like, kind of light part of that ballpark where I'm not really training that much and I'm just taking my chances. But I think if I just, I'm good when I train a lot, and I don't have to be, like crushing everything under the sun, but just staying, in the game and being free with it. It's like, I think about this a lot when you get, people trying to hit watts on the bike for example. I just feel like I can just, we talk about how you can look and see people thinking and swimming. I think there's something to be said for that with people on the bike that aren't really good cyclists. They're just like mechanically trying to hammer something, and that doesn't necessarily make them faster. I'm talking a lot of shit right now, but just like something that makes, it's just a big deal to me, like, I keep thinking about that. Like, how do you go faster? I don't think it's just like always in a robotic motion. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny you said that, because I was actually thinking, going back to the bike ride this morning with Hayden, is he was going up these hills and he just intrinsically knows, which every kid does, like, you get up out of your saddle when you need to.
That's what we
get
forgot.
up the hill.
Yep.
Right. And, he just like, then he moves left and he moves right, he's shaking the bike. But if I had told him, hey, this is how you climb, he would have done it wrong. Because as soon as I say something, it's like immediately polluted by, for him, it's like your dad telling you what to do, or overthinking it because he overthinks so many things, like, or I don't want to do it your way because you're my dad, or I've seen someone else do it this way, or I want it to be perfect because you are my dad. So immediately what you say, it's immediately polluted by like how it's then filtered through his brain, then turned into action. But then, so I just choose not to say anything, and he does it like not perfectly, but like he knew exactly what to do, just like going with the flow and do this. And like you said, like same thing in the pool. Like a lot of times we see people, at camps or come in for like a swim analysis. Like I'm like, I can legit see you going through your to-do list, and half of it's wrong. And it's also really slow because you have to go through like all these checks. Like I'd rather you look sloppy and be fast than look pretty and be slow. right? And that's like, kind of the same thing with running. Like, I need to do and that's why no one ever gives like an hour-long run session that's all drills. A little bit of drill, like just to kind of remind you of like a good pattern, and then just go run, right? And flow and feel it, right? And that's what should feel good. Like it's even somebody earlier this week was like, speaking like ranges, and they were like, why are you giving me like 55 minutes to 110? Like, I'm always going to do the 55. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, but you also complain all the time about how freaking hot it is, how miserable it is, and how hard it is, and how you're struggling with confidence. So what if I gave you an hour 10, you couldn't do it? Then you feel like a failure. And they're like, all right, fair point. And I'm like, that's like, you got like, there's like, what's wrong? If I say 55, guess what? Doing 50 is also okay. If that's what you're feeling, like that, like there's just, again, there's almost like there's too much input now. Because there's like through like the radio waves and the brain waves and the stress, like everything coming at us all the time, like there's this like an enormous amount of impact that goes through like the process of it. And here's the thing is, it's also so individual for everyone. Like I mean, you lose me
A little bit, but I got you.
there you go, hold on a second.
Well,
There you go.
there you go.
Yeah, well, I think I'm back. Hold on, my pod track died.
Oh,
There you go. No, I'm back, baby.
no.
Yeah, I'm back.
Oh,
So
yeah,
no, what
yeah,
I was
you're
saying,
back.
just to finish the thought out was, going back to, like the ranges and being successful and like meeting certain things. We have all these inputs and all these things that interfere with like our decision making and how we feel. And like one of the and going back, like everyone's different, right? Everyone has a different way of coping. And I went through this on the Zoom call about stress. Was like, if I give you a workout and I think it's gonna be perfect for that day. It's gonna it's a Tuesday quality bike ride, and you crush your Monday swim, and you nail it, right? You feel incredible. This is great. I'm super recovered from the weekend. Like, this is awesome. I feel awesome. You check that, Monday afternoon, you're like, all right, all systems go. Here we go, baby. You wake up Tuesday, I'm checking training peaks. I'm like, no bike rides done. All right, all things good. But then you wake up and you have a horrible night of sleep, right? And so you oversleep, but you don't feel rested. And then you have a super stressful day at work, and you're rushed, and you can't do the full workout, but you still want to get some of it in. Like, that's nothing what we thought was going to happen is now happening. So now what decision do you make, right? And let's say it was like you had like an incredible day, or that was still good stress, right? I got a promotion, like all these things changed, I got all those responsibilities, had to make these phone calls and tell my spouse and tell my kids, like it's super awesome, but it's still stress. Like it still takes energy. It's still sucking it out of you. Or it could have been, hey, I lost my job today, I still want to get this in. Then it's like, what do you do with the ride?
Put it on Saturday with everything else.
Right. Exactly.
Just move everything to
do
Saturday.
Like the quad stack, like just do an Ironman on Saturday, big deal. But every athlete would approach that differently. Some would say, I'm celebrating. Oh, fuck that. I'm not doing a ride. Like, I'm taking the day off. Like, I deserve it. Someone else, I want to hop on the bike. I'm feeling so good. I'm going to go crush this thing. You have a bad day. I don't have it in me. I got nothing. Like, I'm totally zapped. Another person, I can't live, lost my job. I'm gonna get on the bike and I'm gonna go on a revenge tour on Zwift, and I'm gonna take every KOM and I'm gonna crush it, and I'm also gonna crush myself, and I don't care in the moment. Like, that's 4 different scenarios about 2 different scenarios that, again, like coaches and training, like they have no idea. So like, that's why it's so much responsibility goes to the athlete to like make these decisions, but also to be a little flexible, because like you can also, like, there's really nothing you can't come back from. In a lot of ways, yes, there's some stupid decisions you can make, and like I had an athlete do a a unplanned, unsupported 24-mile trail run on Saturday.
I love it.
Right? And you're thinking, and you're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this isn't like a PSA to go do this, but then they had a blast. No race on the calendar coming up like soon. What do you think my response was? How are the legs today? That's it. How are you feeling? Can we keep going through the week, or do we need to change things for you? Like, I hope you had a blast. That's it. Not like, ooh, we went way over the TSS today. I'm going to have to scale things back. I'm going to have to change up the annual training plan and training peaks. Like things are now off kilter. Like we went way too much into zone 3 on that and you went way overboard. I'm like, you got up, you had an itch, you scratched it, we're moving on. And you know what? Good for you. Because I know this person's also is like going through like a tremendous amount of stress in their personal life, in their professional life. I'm like, good for you. Get out and do something like that. Like, because to me, like that's the beauty of why we do what we do. As you can just pick up on a Saturday morning and just fucking go for it. Just go, full send it. Have a good time. Have someone else that's got like a race, coming up in a few weeks, like at Oregon, and their ride was for like, went out with the boys and decided to go ahead and drop them for 4 hours. What in the why would I ever like? Oh, that was too much. You went way too much over. Now we're reaching a tipping point. Like we have to, again, like I know we talk about flexibility a lot, but it's just so freaking important to allow people to be their most successful self and to stay in the game long enough to where they're not suffering from this burnout. Because again, burnout most oftentimes in the mental and emotional burnout, it's our expectation, how quickly and how much we want things to happen and happen for ourselves, and then why we want them to happen, whether it's because you're going through a rough time in life. And I need our Ironman, I think like depression podcast was about that. Like you put all this pressure, all this expectation on what a race is going to change for you, but you're still going to wake up being the same person the next day. You're just going to be chafed. The shower's going to hurt. You're going to feel bloated, and you're going to have to walk down the stairs backwards. Outside of that, and you're going to have a medal. Outside of that, you're the same dude. But then you get depressed because you're like, I thought this was going to be like life-changing. And you're like, well, that's kind of on you, right? Because like we all have these like, again, visions of what we want out of training and even just sessions. And then like on a much more like global scale, like, what we want these races to do for us and change about us and impact us and how people to see us. And I'm like, it's not how it works. So like maybe scale back the seriousness of how we portray, like what we have to get out of this and what we have to do in term, if you can change haves into wants or gets, then you're in a good spot. I just want to go run today. Then if you want to pick it up the hill, then pick it up the hill. If you don't, you don't. Just kind of like do what feels good, because a win is a win is a win. That's it. Like that's just, it's extra. It's a bonus. It feels good. It's very similar to you go out, you had an incredible run, you felt great, things are awesome, your comments are positive, and then you like go check and you're like, oh, but it wasn't as fast as I thought I was. And then now you're down about it. It's just like, there's way too much input, I think, interfering with all the positive outputs we can have.
Yeah, man. I just think, again, we take this shit very seriously sometimes, and or at least like reactionarily so soon. I think you just, when you said that about the Ironman, and then people expect it to change, and I was certainly one of those people, and it did change me the minute I crossed that finish line. For about 2 hours, I was absolutely completely in the moment, meditative state, beyond belief. Nothing bothered me. I had no bills and no enemies and no bad situations in my life, but they all came back the next morning. But yeah, you're like, I was sore as fuck, so like, but I think it's one of those things where I've slowly been able to maybe at some level change that, thought process to I'm changing, but it's this whole process that does it. It's you can't put it on that day. And I was just maybe we can do the next podcast about this, but I wanted to ask, do you think the Ironman full is fading away a little bit?
Man, that is it's funny you asked that, because someone else asked me that the other day.
Oh, come on.
So swear. And I honestly don't. I mean, I was looking back. I mean, I've got 40 plus people doing Ironman this year. And I think we are stuck as like an athlete population between what we really want and what drives us and what excites us compared to what the reality is of the time that we have to do it. And I think we're kind of trying to, come back and, go through like this kind of adjustment where Ironman is still what excites people. Like, I mean, even to me, like if I'm like, it's like, it's not for a sprint. I got to do one of those fucking tomorrow. It's like, or it's not do a 70.3 fast. It's like, I wonder what a full I could do, because it's that thing out there that is, because it is, yeah, 7.3s and Olympic sprints are all challenging in a different way. But like, and I know some other, that's like, it's this big, scary, unknown goal that's just like process oriented and you love. And I don't miss any of the Ironman racing because it's freaking uncomfortable, but I do love the process of it. But I just like, right. But for me, like maybe I'm that example of like, fading away is like, I still haven't kind of like come to grips with, okay, well, it still is there and you could do it on 8 to 9 hours a week, and get it done and still have a process, just a different looking process. Because again, like I think we, just like the housing market's kind of like, readjusting itself right now, is same thing with, from the interest rates and how the market was during COVID and right before COVID and post COVID. It's kind of normalizing. It's before COVID was this, and then it was never the world's going to be the same. But we've also have like unlimited time. Basically, I can take all my Zooms from the house. My kids aren't traveling. I got all this time to do whatever I want to. And now we're like, seems busier than ever. But these things are still there. So we in a sense, some people have less time. Some people have more, right? Less time, more stress. So they see like, oh, I can't do this. And then also I think one of the hardest things is like now that podcasts and social media have become even more popular, there's more opportunity to intake. All you really hear is more, 20 plus hours, 30 plus hours, like what it takes to be the best. And like, there's not many average Joe Cass out there that was like, I mean, there was on a text with some athletes yesterday and they were saying like, yeah, like I averaged 10 to 12 hours and I did great in my full. Like, but that's not the perception. People hear Ironman, they think I need 20 plus hours, to train. It's not like, oh, I can still be really, really good and like lethally precise with volume and intensity and still have a really great day. So I don't know that it's fading. I think there's obviously a lack of the amount of them in North America, but I know they're still selling out. I think 7.3 it's a good sweet spot, happy medium for people. Yeah, if that's the long-winded way of answering your question.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't think it really can, but because it is the nexus for all this stuff. I mean, I think it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's probably like I think it might be just I don't know about fading away, but it's certainly not as hot as it was maybe, or maybe I'm just imagining that. I don't have the numbers. I don't know what they're doing, but I just see, these fulls that used to be 3,000 and now they're like 1,500 all over. It just seems like that. And it just seems like there's more energy behind the 70.3s, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
And that comes with, the Rockford, for example. So it was a really tough day. And that sort of be like, wow, that 70.3s those are tough. And I was kind of thinking to myself, was that, cause they're all relative, right? But we did Louisville when it was 100 degrees. I mean, is it different, tough? I mean, those are interesting questions, I suppose, but I definitely, I would like to see them maybe showcase and put out a full again, maybe like put Madison back at a, open or like a mass start and just blow it out again and get rid of that 70.3 and move it somewhere else, because it just, to me, it dilutes the whole weekend. And why have it? Why not get 3,000 when you can have 3,000 at $1,000 versus, 3,000, half of them at like $400. I don't get what they're doing there. Maybe they can't, but I think the mass start to me was when it started. I bet if they put it back, they'd sell that thing out at 2,500.
I bet they would too. Most people say we're wrong, but I'm with you.
It's too dangerous. Fuck off.
Too
Whatever.
It is
man.
way too dangerous.
Just start in the back, man.
It's way more dangerous than asking someone to run depleted, probably dehydrated in 105-degree heat at a higher intensity. Way more dangerous. Way more dangerous than starting to swim in a lake with people. I get it, man. I get it. Oof, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about how scared I am of that. I mean, come on, give me a break, people. But yeah, get out there this weekend. Again, it's July 4th. Like, go on a group run, go hang out with some friends, go on a coffee ride, hop in a last minute, firecracker 5K or 10K, but just go rip one off. Go do something fun this weekend, and don't be so anal about the perfection and the precision. Like, there's a time and a place. Like, 80, maybe it's the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the time, stay on it. Hit the numbers you need to hit. Staying with intensity goal. 20%, live a little bit. Same thing with eating, right? I try to eat well 80% of the time. 20%, I'm going up to Annie's. I'm getting a concrete with Reese's peanut butter cup, Butterfinger, and melted chocolate chips. That's my life. So this weekend, go have some Andes. That's it. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful July 4th. Enjoy your holiday. Grill out. And if you are going out and you're having brats or hot dogs, do yourself a favor. Use mustard, not ketchup. Right? Mustard is the most underrated condiment on the planet. It is, yes, for more sophisticated palates, but just come on, use some mustard in your life. We could all use a little more mustard.
Most underrated on the planet? Come on.
Yeah, it is the most underrated condiment on the planet, mustard.
All right.
I'm just saying, like, just do yourself a favor, Like, do yourself a favor. It's my PSA for today. All right, guys, we love you, and we will check you next time.
All right, man. See you.
See you, dude.